Hi, and this is the Digital Darkroom, and in this episode we're going to be looking at sharpening our images. Now, sharpening can sometimes be called the third contrast control. We already have contrast, we already have clarity, and sharpening is really just adding more contrast. With any digital image, there actually are three stages of sharpening. There is the capture sharpening, there is creative sharpening, and then there is output sharpening. Now, the idea of capture sharpening is to capture sharpening is there to reduce the effect of softening that actually happens when you take a picture. When you take the picture, because of the sensor and the glass, there is a slight softening of the image, and so capture sharpening is there to correct the softness, basically. Creative sharpening is the process of selectively sharpening or adding extra sharpening or even removing sharpening from certain areas of an image. The last part is output sharpening, and output sharpening is once again a way to combat softening of an image. Now, as you print an image, the actual image can be softened by the way like ink hitting the paper. So you sometimes over sharpen the image when you're going to print an image, just so that the image actually is sharp and it doesn't actually get softened through printing. Images need to be sharpened slightly for when you put them on the internet and things like this, because of the size and the way they're going to be viewed. So those are the three steps, and each step you can actually do within Lightroom itself. The first part we're going to look at is capture sharpening. And when we actually look at the panel, which is here, there are four sliders. You have amount, which shows how strong the sharpening is. Radius, which is the size of the difference between light and dark pixels before it's considered an edge. So what actually is going to make up a contrast? Is it going to be 1 pixel like difference in light and dark, or is it going to be 2 pixels, 3 pixels, 4 pixels, something like this? But it's roughly how big that is going to be. And detail, which controls the sharpening of the subtle edges. Maybe we can put it that way. Or edge details. And you can, depending on the image, depends on actually how much detail sharpening you need to do. The mask allows you to sort of control where the sharpening is happening as well, and it allows you to sort of isolate some areas in the general sharpening. And there's one reason really for this, and that's because there are two types of images. You can have a high frequency and a low frequency image. So we'll start with the high frequency image to begin with. And with a high frequency image, this is an image that has a lot of edges. So a landscape typically is a high frequency image. And as you can see, there are a lot of little detailed edges here. So how should we sharpen the picture? Well, generally with a high frequency image, you'd actually set the radius a little bit lower, because you would want to have all of the little lines, all the little edges, to be sharpened. So in this, if you hold down Alt as you move the radius, you can see this sort of black and white sort of grayscale image as you move it up and down. And as you move up, it will look a lot sharper, and as you move down, areas may look less sharp. So I would, with this image in particular, I want to get quite a lot of the edges sharp, so 0.9 is going to be about right. Now, also because there are a lot of, edges, we probably need to actually include the detail quite high. Okay? If we have a low detail, it means there's going to be very little detail sharpening. And if you put a very high detail, you're going to get a lot of high detail sharpening. So we could probably say maybe like if this is above average, so we can maybe like 70% here. The problem with this can be sometimes with very high ISO images, because as you move the detail up, it's going to sharpen the noise, which we will look at in the next episode. And you don't really want to be sharpening noise, really. So that can be a little bit of an issue. But with this image in particular, it's shot about 250 ISO, so it's not going to be too bad in the noise department. And I haven't really, apart from down here at the bottom, I haven't really pushed the image too much. And the last bit is the masking, and the masking is then setting, which areas will be controlled, will be sharpened. So the best way to see masking is once again press Alt as you move the slider, and on your screen you'll get this whole sort of black and white. And everything which is white is really an edge, and this is what is going to be sharpened. And as you move it up, you can see less and less areas are going to be sharpened. Now some people go, okay, we put it at 100 because we want all of this sharpened. Yes, that is correct. You only want this, you want these big areas here sharpened. But it's only going to be those sort of big edges. It's not going to be all the tiny ones. So actually with a sort of a low frequency image, you need it more to be around about 20 to get all the sharpening. And one way to see how you're sharpening, and the correct way to see how you're sharpening, is to actually zoom into the image at 100%. So if we click off, we'll see the result, which is a lot softer. It's sharp, but it's soft, because that's the softening that we talked about earlier. And if we click on, it's much more detailed. Now, if we're to move the masking all the way to the top here, and then we can go Control Z, there has been a slight difference in that sharpening there as well. So this is how you sharpen a high frequency image. Now how much sharpening, the amount, which you sort of skipped over, that is really up to each individual image and up to how much. I generally try and sharpen until I'm getting to the point where I'm sharpening noise. So this is sharpening noise here. You can see the noise up in here becoming quite sharp, and it's looking a bit, so 80 way too high. Actually 40 wasn't doing too badly. It didn't really have too much noise. And as you can see, you click on the Alt, you get the preview as you do this, and you can sort of see when the noise is being sharpened. Okay. So what we'll do is in the next videos we'll come back to this image to look at reducing noise. And we can then see how the sharpening and the noise reduction can be done together. So that's a high frequency image having some capture sharpening. Now on to a low frequency image. Now with a low frequency image, this is an image which has very few edges, or the edges are very big, they're very wide. So the low frequency image is sort of the opposite to a high frequency image. In this, you probably want to have a higher radius. So we're looking at this eye here, because this is the eye which is in focus. This is in focus here. This is out of focus. This nose bit here, there's a bit of lip here, and this bit here is just in focus as well as some of the hair. But the eye is what I'm really interested in for this image. So just have a zoom in. Now you can see this one was shot at 800 ISO, and there's actually quite a bit more noise around here. So we need to be a little bit careful, but because it's a low frequency image, we can get around this noise quite nicely. So the radius. We talked before that on a high frequency image, the radius needs to be very low. On a low frequency image, the radius can be a bit higher. 1.7 is probably going to be over exaggerating this. Maybe back to 1.6. Now details. Well, we don't want a lot of fine details to be sharpened, so we can actually keep this around about 25, or even move this back a little bit as well. And with masking, well, we only want these very large wide edges sharpened, so we can put the masking quite high up. And as you can see, as I hold it down, everything that's black will not be sharpened. So if that's what the noise is, that noise is not going to be sharpened. Okay, and how much? Well, let's get out again. And we just do a quick before and after. So this is before. This is after. So there's not as a great a difference. We'll move in. Okay, we'll do the before. And we'll do the after. Okay, and you can actually see there that actually the small little details which are here have actually become less sharp because I've moved that down and I've isolated the sharpening only to be the wider areas. Okay, how much? Oof. This is going to be tricky because I don't want to sharpen too much noise. I might actually have this a little bit lower, maybe about 25 for the minute, because I'm going to do quite a bit of noise reduction. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward on the actual sharpening process. The creative sharpening comes next. So what we can say with this image is that we really just want to have this sort of area here, keep it in focus, and because of the noise, we sort of can soften the rest. Well, how can you soften? There's no blur tool in Lightroom. Well, there is, in a way. What you can do is actually use the local adjustment tools. So here we can use, I've already got 3, which are here. Well, add a new one. And let's just, if we keep this area here. Now we want to check to see where we're covering. Okay, so everything which is not red is everything which is not red is not going to be affected. Okay, and what we can now do is we'll take off the clarity because we don't want any clarity, and we can actually take the sharpness and we can reduce the sharpness. Now what does this do? Well, if we had a setting of about 30, if we take it back to -30, the picture will go back to the sharpness of the area will go back to what it was when the picture was taken. If we go a little bit further, it softens the image. It doesn't really blur it, it just softens the image, and in a way reduces the contrast between those edges. And then what you can actually have is very much a selective focus. And if we just go close 1 second. So this is now after we've done this, until all of this has now become soft around here, apart from this area here, which is the eye. And then it has this quite striking thing that as you move around, she looks at you from every possible angle. That's quite nice. And what we could do as well, I'm not too much of a fan of doing this as well. Whoops, we need to go to the right one. There we go. So here it was. You could actually also reduce the clarity. Now the reason I don't like reducing the clarity is because it actually this reduces the midtone contrast, and although it does give a softening effect, it makes actually everything quite flat. So I would only actually add I would only ever add a little bit of this. Maybe we can rotate and just extend this down a little bit like this. So here we are. And just maybe extend it out a little bit this way. Just so it's like a wider area and doesn't look so circular and things like that. So there you go. That's one way of using creative sharpening, doing creative sharpening. So with this image, what do we want to do? Well, I want to sort of keep this sort of harbor area sharp, and maybe bring in this to be like less sharp, and this to be a little bit less sharp, to sort of bring in the view into this area here. So just like in the other picture, we can use a local adjustment tool. Now we have to remember that our sharpening, the amount of sharpening was 29. Well, no, we need a bit stronger than that. There we go. I'll put it there. So just like before, we can just pull down our adjustment tool, and then we could just reduce the clarity. But as you see, this is what I mean by it sort of just flattens that area, and it just becomes a sort of glowy. It's not really out of focus or less sharp. So what we can do is just reduce this down to about 50. would probably be enough. And it's just created a nice softness in the clouds there. And then what we could do, we have an adjustment already here, which is increasing the brightness, so we can actually tack this on and reduce down here, probably quite a bit more, like this. Yep. There we go. And we just sort of softened this bit here, but kept this middle bit here sharp. And everything looks fantastic. So how do we think about doing the last part of sharpening? Well, with Lightroom, this is actually very easy because it's done on the export. So if once you've finished with your image and you're like, okay, let's send it off to the internet for people to look at, we can just click export. And then here on the export, we can scroll down. This is one of my presets. And we can click for Sharpen for. And then you have Sharpen for screen, Sharpen for matte paper, and Sharpen for glossy paper. So if you want to sharpen for screen, you then have a choice of high, low, high, or standard. I would generally say, I generally go for high sharpening for screen. That's just my particular, view on it. But I would experiment to see which one is actually going to be best for you and your images. If you already have quite contrasted and very sharp, sometimes maybe a lower sharpening for screen would be better. Now, the reason why there's two different options for paper is because matte and glossy paper need slightly different amounts of sharpening. But once again, if you click matte paper, you have high, low, standard. And you have glossy paper, you can do the same. So it's actually worth thinking about how you are going to actually present the picture, or how the output's going, what the output's going to be before you send it off to be sharpened. Because that way you can actually think about what is the best way for the image, and what is the best way for the image to be sharpened for the output. So if I think about like some photos when I send them off to be printed, I generally like to print on matte paper, just because when you hang it on the wall, the print doesn't reflect the light, the paper doesn't reflect the light. Generally like matte paper. Some people prefer like a glossier look, so maybe if it's going on like to be printed onto like a banner or a poster, you want to sharpen it for glossy. So that's everything we need to know about sharpening. And in the next episode, we'll be looking at noise reduction and reducing noise. So until then, I hope you liked the video. If you did, click the like button and share this with your friends. If you'd like to read more about sharpening, especially to do with Lightroom, you can go to my blog, which is aperture64.wordpress.com, and you can view the whole post which I wrote about it, or you can just click in the description below. Until next time, have fun. Bye-bye.